Hello, welcome to Chapter 2, Part 2. Hope you've answered the questions after Chapter 2, Part 1. I'm definitely curious as to whether you've used SWOT before. I assume many of you have, both academically and maybe in your business careers. For some of you, this may be a new concept or a new tool. But for all of you, it's good to review SWOT and review it in the specific use within a marketing plan. So what are the kinds of things that we looked for strengths and weaknesses on a marketing plan? And now let's look at the external opportunities and threats. What kind of things should we be looking at in opportunities and threats? So we're going to primarily, to start out with, we're going to look at demographics, and we're going to look at consumer demographics or business demographics. Well, demographics, what are they? They're sort of the characteristics of the marketplace or the potential consumer within the targeted segment or the segment that you're thinking about targeting. So they include all sorts of different things. Trends might be population growth, population stagnation, population decline. Those have significant, those kinds of macro demographic trends have a significant impact on marketing plans. Right now, the U.S. Population is growing at somewhere around just under 2% or right around 2%. European populations in most of Western Europe are either stagnant or declining. So there's negative population growth, which makes the whole immigration from the Middle East kind of an interesting situation. You've got an aging population that's not growing. Pretty hard to have an economy work with a shrinking population. Japan has been struggling with that for many years, where they have negative population growth. There are fewer people. Same thing in Russia, fewer people. Makes it hard to manage an economy and provide prosperity for all when you have fewer and fewer people. And as a marketer, obviously, if there's fewer and fewer people and they're aging, that's something you have to put into the mix for your marketing plan. So that's the first external demographic. That's a macro trend, and then there are specific trends within your target markets or in the segment that you're targeting. The age within that segment, the gender, male-female mix. You may have a product that you're targeting a segment that's all male, it's all female, it's heavily male or heavily female. How is that? Ethnicity of the population that you're targeting. Are you targeting English-speaking white Americans? Are you targeting Hispanic Americans whose maybe first language is not English? Maybe it's not even a language issue. Maybe it's a preference for certain kinds of things. If you're selling food, different ethnic groups have different preferences in food, so you need to know that. Religious makeup can be very important depending on the kind of product you're targeting. Are you dealing with Muslims? Are you dealing with Christians? Are you dealing with segments of Christians like evangelical Christians or Catholics or mainstream Protestants? All sorts of religious makeup questions. Education. How educated is the population that's in your segment or that you're targeting? What do they do for work? How large are their household sizes? Are they single? Are they married without children, married with children, married with one child, two child, three child, so forth. So household size, and then income. Another demographic statistic that's really important to know: what kind of income level might you need for your particular product. Couple of background pieces there, or examples. I was running one of the businesses that I ran in the Boston area. We had a pretty extensive mailing list of people who had shopped with us. This is sort of maybe the very beginning of big data. I don't know. The list was 15 or 20,000 people, something like that. And we sort of thought we knew who our customer was, but we didn't really. And there was a service that would take your mailing list and would give you a lot of the demographic makeup of the mailing list: age, gender, education, income, and even location, obviously zip code location kind of thing, and household size, and to a certain extent they could target occupation. And what we realized, what we got back for data, is that we had a customer population that was wildly overeducated relative to the overall population in the marketplace. Our customers, it's been a while, but I think 60% of them had advanced degrees. So 60% of them had master's degrees or doctorates. That's crazy. In the general population, that number is 2 or 3%. So what we learned from that, from a marketing standpoint, is, hey, our product or our marketing, or we have a lot of appeal to educated people. We ought to be targeting educated people with our marketing. So we learned something, and we were able to use it to better target our marketing. Business demographics are different. Obviously, we're not looking at age or gender, or usually not at ethnicity. We're looking at different kinds of things. So if we're looking at a target industry, how many companies are in the industry? How fragmented is the industry? How concentrated is the industry? Companies in the industry, how many locations or branches do they have? Are they single location companies, or do they have branches all over the place? That's going to affect how we target them as a segment that we're approaching. How many employees do they have? How big are they? What are their sales revenues? That's just a few of the things that we might look at within an industry. So just as an example, locations or branches, if I was going to sell to Hannaford supermarkets here in the Northeast, would I go to the local Hannafords to make the sale, or would I need to go to wherever their headquarters are, which happens to be just outside of Portland, Maine, in this case? Most likely, I'm going to be pitching my product, trying to have Hannaford carry my product, going to the headquarters, to the buying headquarters, which is going to supply all of the stores in their network. So that's probably where I'm going to go. But if I have a really specialized product, maybe I want to start and go ground up. Maybe I want to go to the managers in a few of the stores that I think are in the right demographic areas, and have them sort of push up towards the buyers to encourage them to carry this product, because the managers in the stores think it would be a good product. Depends on the company. I don't know if Hannaford listens from the bottom up. I think they actually do, or whether they are a totally top-down kind of situation. So you have to understand that before you put your marketing plan together. So that's going to be an opportunity and or a threat. It's an externality that you have to understand about the business demographic side. So understanding that externality is important. Another external analysis, what's happening economically within the markets that I'm targeting. Global, national, regional, local, depends on what markets I'm targeting, but what's happening economically. We might be looking at buying power, income, how much credit availability people and or companies have, depending on whether we're doing business to business or business to consumer. Currency values, if we're doing overseas sales, what is happening to the value of the currency that we're going to be selling in relative to the currency we're producing in. All of those things need to be looked at. Big external forces, not necessarily something we can control, but perhaps something we can analyze and perhaps try to predict what's going to happen in the near future. Obviously, it's difficult to predict macroeconomic trends, but we can make some assumptions. So very, very important to understand what's going on depending on what kind of consumer we're targeting, a business to business or business to a B2C or B2B type situation. Other kinds of trends. What are the raw materials that I use? Are they readily available? Are there lots of suppliers for those raw materials, or is there a single source for the raw materials that I need to produce my product? Um, in the not too distant past, rare earth minerals, which are used in a lot of electronic equipment, 80 to 90% of the world's supply was coming from China. And China started to restrict access to those rare earth minerals. Whether that was for economic reasons or political reasons really doesn't matter. As a company, that's a threat if all of the supply comes from a single source, in this case, a single region, or under the control of a single government in China. So how available are the raw materials I need to make my product? If they're available from lots of sources, that's less of a threat than if they're available from a few or only one source. Government regulations. What's happening in my industry to regulate what I do? Are there new regulations or existing regulations that may affect the markets that I'm targeting or my own production processes? Those can be significant threats. Sometimes they're opportunities. If government regulations are going to limit the number of coal power plants in the US, that's an opportunity for other kinds of power generation. It's also an opportunity for, say, someone who's making pollution control equipment. If we can make coal plants cleaner, then they won't get shut down. So they would be interested in my product if I have a product that might make them operate in a cleaner manner. Government mandates. You have to buy from for instance, if you're selling to the military, has to be either US produced product or unavailable from any US producer, so that then there's an exception made if there's no US producer of a particular product. I used to do some government contracting in one of the businesses I had. Proving US sourcing was a big part of getting those contracts. You had to prove that the product you were offering to the government was US made, and the regulations around that were arcane. Lots of very detailed and very difficult to deal with. But if you succeeded in dealing with them, you had a big advantage over other people who might be bidding on the same business. And then social attitudes change. There's been a fair amount of regulation of tobacco, but there's also been a huge change in social attitudes towards tobacco and tobacco use, which has changed the marketplace. So if I'm selling a market where the social attitude towards the product I'm selling is changing, then I need to be aware of that. Another example might be, say, I don't know, red meat. Certainly the social attitudes towards eating red meat are different than they were 20 or 30 years ago. Lots of health concerns about eating red meat. So people are more cautious about it. So if I'm selling beef, let's say, I have to be aware of that. I have to be aware of the fact that my market is changing because social attitudes towards my product are changing. So important stuff to understand about any market that we're looking at. Technological trends, hugely important to understand what's going on in any marketplace. I've listed a few here that are all fairly recent. I think you're all familiar with all of those bullet points there. How are these changes affecting markets, and specifically, how are they a threat or an opportunity for whatever product it is that I'm analyzing? Can I utilize these to make my product more effective or more desirable, or are they a threat that they're going to change the marketplace and make my product less viable So couple of big changes there. I can give you an old-timey example on telecommuting. Um, when if any, I don't know if any of you are familiar with or remember Boston's Big Dig, where they essentially took down the raised highway that went through Boston and sunk it underground. And it took a long, long time to do. 12, 15 years, and it was 12 to 15 years of gridlock in the city. Since it's been finished, it's dramatically better, but it was a painful, long time construction project that really messed up the city. And I operated some stores right in the central city, some retail stores right in the central city, right in the financial district. And for the most part, our customers were people who worked downtown. So they were the stockbrokers and the bankers and the lawyers and the financial people that worked downtown, pretty affluent. And a lot of times we would see them as customers at lunchtime. It was, go grab a sandwich and then go walk around a store with lots of fun adult toys, skis and tennis rackets and whatever. Um, and we knew most of these people, my staff knew most of these people by name. You'd see them once a week, maybe once every couple of weeks. It was entertainment at lunchtime. And they had a lunchtime, and they did that. With the Big Dig, commuting became such a problem that most of these higher end consumers only came to the office a couple of days a week. They stayed and worked from home. They could work on the internet. They could do everything they could do in Boston. They could do at home. And when they came to Boston, their days were packed. They didn't have lunch hours anymore. If they ate lunch, they ate it with a client, or they ate it, brown bagged it with their staff, or whatever. So they didn't go to lunch anymore. Changed our traffic patterns and our business dramatically. There were just as many people working downtown. They weren't there as often, and when they were there, they didn't have any free time. They didn't have any time to decompress. So made a huge change, and it was difficult to overcome. So we came up with some marketing plans to overcome these problems, but we never got back to what was as good as it had been before. So seeing that stuff coming, being able to predict that's coming is an important piece of your external analysis and SWOT analysis. Political legal trends. These can be international political legal trends, federal, state, and local. They can be relative to pricing, relative to taxation, changes all the time, laws about promotion, laws about what you can say in advertising and what you can't say in advertising, labor laws, distribution laws, product liability laws, labeling laws. These things change all the time. So understanding what those political and legal trends are, what's coming next, not only what's there now, but what's coming or what might come, really, really important, depending on what kind of a market you're looking at. Political trends, especially if you're marketing internationally, understanding political trends is hugely important. You're dealing with lots of different types of national governments. If governments are unstable, you have to be able to deal with that. If there's political violence in a certain area, you have to be able to deal with that. So if you're currently working in the Middle East or Western Africa, you're dealing with political violence. Northern and Western Africa, I guess. And South Asia, India, Pakistan, Turkey, all of those places have some instability, and definitely, whether they're unstable or not, they definitely is a lot of political violence. You have to deal with nationalism, so that we talk about Buy American. Well, if you're in India, there's Buy India. So understanding how people approach things from a nationalistic standpoint, really important. If I'm selling my American product in India and the nationalism is strong, we don't want to buy American products, then maybe I need to think about my marketing, or maybe I need to think about producing the product in India, something like that. International regulations change, international taxation laws change, all of that stuff you need to look at. Nationally and locally, you may have a change in the regulatory environment. You may have a change in local or U.S. taxation, or in any country. It might not be in the U.S., but national and local changes have a significant impact on can have a significant impact on your marketing plan and your product. Social and cultural trends, popular culture changes very rapidly. It's often faddish and short-lived. So you fads come and go. They are here today and gone tomorrow. And as we've moved more and more to that electronic culture with digital media and social networking, the fads seem to have actually accelerated. They come and go faster. So how many of you had Beanie Babies as young children? Was that a hot fad when you were around? I don't know. I think we've got a class here with lots of different ages. I know my daughter, when she was young, Beanie Babies were the thing. Had to have Beanie Babies. That changes all the time. There were Pogs. There were Legos. There were all sorts of things that were faddish in and out that people had to have, and then they went by and they weren't there anymore. So popular culture changes. Children's fads change. Teenagers are definitely, because they're so focused on peer acceptance, they're very prone to fads. But fads exist in all walks of life and all age groups. And understanding those and making sure that you're not just riding a fad that's only going to last 6 months or a year, that it's not sustainable is also important. The core beliefs of people and their values change more slowly over time. They do change, but they change more slowly. I think in my lifetime, the values relative to homosexuality have changed 180 degrees. Homosexuality, same-sex marriage, things like that are now accepted, and they were not even talked about 30 years ago, let alone accepted. It was under the rug. Nobody talked about it. Nobody even acknowledged the homosexual existence, and now it's part of the mainstream and pretty much fully accepted. So this kind of stuff changes, but that took a long time for that kind of a social change or a core belief or value change. Whereas the fad changes happen much faster. So understanding those kinds of changes that are taking place both at a fast speed and at a slow speed is really important when you're doing an external analysis. External analysis of the competitors in the segments I'm looking at. Who's out there currently and who might enter the market. So possible future competitors. In a few minutes, we're going to talk about another analysis tool beyond SWOT that really looks at a particular marketplace and the threats to that marketplace. We'll talk about that shortly. Who might enter the market? What does each competitor bring to the market? What are their core competencies? What are they really good at? Because if I'm going to position my product, I want to position my product for what I'm really good at, and hopefully that's going to be something that maybe my competitor isn't really good at. So my competitors really aren't good at. And you might want to look at market share. So who's growing in market share, who's getting a bigger slice of the particular segment that I'm looking at, and who's trending in the other direction. Where are their opportunities? Always looking for this window of opportunity. Where's the room in a market for me to enter or for me to grow? Really, you can put marketing strategies into 3 big boxes, and we're going to talk about this as we go forward. But most marketing strategies are going to fit into one of these boxes. You're going to have a strategy where you look to be the low cost or price leader in the marketplace. So that's a cost price strategy. So I want to be the least expensive. I want to be the most efficient producer and be able to sell my product at the lowest price. Second strategy, a differentiation strategy. I want to differentiate my product from other people in the marketplace so that I have a specific position in the marketplace that makes my product different. You can think of lots of marketers who do that. And then the third strategy is not try to go to large segments, but go down to a small niche market, to a focused strategy just designed to appeal to a portion of a segment, a small targeted portion of a segment, so that maybe you can become the dominant player in that particular segment without going up against all of the potential competitors that might be meeting needs in other parts of that same segment. So the other analysis tool that I referenced earlier is called Porter's 5 Forces, and you'll see a lot of this, and you'll use this throughout this course. Michael Porter is a professor at Harvard, but he developed this idea, I think, I don't even know, I should know when he did it, but I think it was in the 1980s. And he started looking at markets and saying, well, is this a market that a company wants to be in? And he said there are really 5 things, there are 5 forces that affect the attractiveness of a market in terms of its profitability, or where you might have success as a vendor in that market, as someone selling into that market segment. So what you look at is how strong are your suppliers, how much bargaining power do your customers have, so do they have lots of options, is it easy for people to enter the market, so is there a threat of new entrants, and are there substitute products that people can use if they choose, rather than using products specific to the market. And then finally, is there lots of competition within the industry? So those 5 things affect how profitable or how attractive a market is. So think about let's take the auto market. So bargaining power, suppliers in the auto market. The suppliers are people that make tires and steel and these days electronic components. How much bargaining power do those suppliers have? Are they strong relative to the automakers themselves? I'm not going to answer the question, but that's what you'd ask if you were in the automobile market. How much bargaining power do customers have in the automobile market? Well, there's lots of choices out there. I can choose to buy this brand or that brand. I can choose to ride the subway or use Uber or other kinds of ride-sharing firms. Take taxis if I'm in a city. There's lots of power that a consumer might have. So there's a fair amount of power, not huge amount. It's a fairly concentrated industry, but there's a fair amount of power. New entrants, pretty hard market to enter. Requires a huge amount of capital and a fair amount of specific expertise to enter the auto market. So threat of new entrants in the global market is relatively small, but threat of new entrants from one company selling in one country to move to another country is probably fairly high. Substitute products, well, I talked about some substitutes in terms of buses or trains or planes or taxis or rideshare or whatever. So there are some substitutes, but they're probably not a huge threat. Rivalry within the industry, pretty strong. It is an oligopolistic industry. There aren't that many players, but pretty competitive marketplace within the industry. So reasonably attractive industry, but not wildly profitable. If you contrast that with, say, the industry that Google's in, not a lot of competitive rivalry. Consumers don't have much bargaining power. Suppliers, there aren't a whole lot necessary for Google's primary product, their search engine. Yeah, they're a new entrants, but they have such a dominant place in the marketplace that new entrants don't seem to have get much traction. And yeah, what do we use besides Google? Bing. And, there's a couple of others, but they're in a dominant position, so it's pretty attractive marketplace there. So 5 forces, another tool. So we go from SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Porter's 5 forces. Use the same data set, look at the information in a little different way. Both powerful tools, and both tools that we're going to be using as we go forward. So that's the end of chapter 2. There's a few questions to follow, and then we're going to go on, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how you approach a case study. So those of you who have done case studies before, this may be a bit of a review, but I'm going to talk to you about how I want you to approach the case studies that you're going to be assigned. So that's upcoming. Thanks very much. Talk to you later.